Flames of fate. Lily's heart raced as she checked the time on her phone for what felt like the 100th time that evening. She stood outside the rundown motel, the neon sign flickering above her head casting an eerie glow over the parking lot. It was their usual spot, discreet, anonymous and far from prying eyes. She'd been meeting Richard here for almost a year now, each encounter a stolen moment away from the lives they pretended to live. He arrived 5 minutes later, his car pulling into the lot with the headlights off as if the darkness could somehow hide the truth of what they were doing. Lily felt a familiar mix of excitement and dread churn in her stomach. She knew they were playing with fire, but the pull between them was too strong to resist. "Hey," Richard greeted her with a kiss that was too brief, too hurried. They always moved like they were racing against time, as if the world might catch up with them at any moment. "Hey," Lily replied, her voice trembling slightly as she followed him inside. The room was exactly as they had left it the last time, dimly lit, with worn-out furniture and the faint smell of cigarettes lingering in the air. The bed creaked under their weight as they sat down, the silence between them heavy with unspoken words. But talking was never what they came here for. They fell into each other's arms, the passion between them as fierce as ever. For a while, the world outside ceased to exist, and all that mattered was the heat of their bodies pressed together, the desperate need to forget everything else. But outside their bubble of stolen moments, something sinister was brewing. The motel was old, the wiring faulty, and that night, fate had decided to intervene. It started with a flicker of light from the ceiling, a small spark that went unnoticed in the heat of their embrace. But soon, the spark grew into something more than a hungry flame that began to spread, fueled by the old, dry wood and the brittle wiring hidden behind the walls. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of smoke, a thick, acrid cloud that began to seep into the room from under the door. Lily was the first to notice, pulling away from Richard with a frown. "Do you smell that?" she asked. Her voice tinged with confusion. Richard's brow furrowed as he sniffed the air, his eyes widening in alarm. "Smoke," he muttered, his heart skipping a beat. "We need to get out of here." They scrambled off the bed, their clothes hastily thrown on as they rushed to the door. But when Richard tried to open it, the handle was scorching hot to the touch. "Damn it," he cursed, pulling his hand back as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Lily's panic was rising, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. "What do we do? We can't get out." Richard looked around the room, his mind racing. The windows were small and barred, a security measure to keep intruders out. But now, it was a prison. "The bathroom," he said suddenly, grabbing her hand and pulling her towards the small, tiled room at the back of the motel room. "We will be safer in there." They stumbled into the bathroom, slamming the door shut behind them as the smoke began to fill the room. Richard quickly turned on the shower, drenching them both in cold water in a desperate attempt to keep the heat at bay. But the fire was relentless, its flames licking at the walls, creeping closer with every passing second. The air grew thick with smoke, and Lily found herself struggling to breathe, her vision blurring as the oxygen in the room began to deplete. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face as she clung to Richard. "I'm so sorry." Richard's arms tightened around her, his own tears mixing with the water that drenched them both. "Me too," he choked out, his voice hoarse from the smoke. "I never wanted this." In those final moments, as the flames closed in around them, they held on to each other, the weight of their choices crashing down on them like a tidal wave. The world outside may never have known their secret, but the fire was a merciless judge, indifferent to the love or guilt that had led them here. As the flames roared and the heat intensified, their world shrank to just the two of them, huddled together in the small, tile-lined bathroom. The fire was merciless, but in those final moments, the panic subsided, replaced by a calm acceptance. Lily and Richard looked into each other's eyes, the regrets and fears fading away, leaving only the undeniable truth that, despite everything, they had loved each other deeply. They held each other close, their breaths shallow as the smoke thickened around them. With one last whispered promise, they closed their eyes, finding solace in the embrace that would be their last. The fire consumed the room, but in that small, suffocating space, they found peace in the only way they could, together.